Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we're going to take a look at vaping laws. Should people be able to smoke an e-cigarette in public? Heaven forbid. But first, it's that time of year again. The session has started in Colorado. Oh, my Lord. So to talk about it, Kristen Wyatt from the Associated Press. Good to see you again.
You too. Thanks for having me.
And that media Marcus guy.
Hello,
Marcus.
John.
Good to see you.
Glad to be
from
back.
the Durango Herald. That's a long drive every day, I got to tell you.
I got to tell you, and I have to turn around after this and go all the way back
to Durango. That is a long. By the way, it's always the Capitol Hill reporters from those outside-lying newspapers that when it's time for layoffs, you're the guys that go.
I know. Tell me about
because
it.
they never see you in the newsroom. It's like, well, let's just lay him off. You know?
It's true.
All right, let's start here. What's the theme of this legislative session?
Well, bipartisanship, of course. You know?
Gag me. What's the theme of this? This is. Can I say that this is going to be a do-nothing legislative session for the most part?
I think anything that's super controversial, I can't see how that's going to get through, because anything you're going to need Republicans and Democrats to come together on this. They're going to need the governor's signature. So anything that's outrageously controversial that they can't get bipartisan support on, that's not going to get through. So in that sense, you're probably not going to see a lot of legislation that's necessarily everybody's going to get worked up over. But so in that sense, I guess you could say that they're not going to be doing any controversial legislation.
Right. The first 2 years of Hickenlooper's administration were magic for him. This guy had pixie dust. Everybody loved him. National surveys showed him to be the most popular governor in the country. And then came 2013. And when Democrats got both houses, and all of it went to crap. And we saw that our governor was not really capable of vetoing any bill or even doing a lot of anything, and he angered a lot of folks and got pretty closer to losing that election than I ever thought. I think this is going to be a rehabilitation year for John Hickenlooper. He doesn't have to make any decisions.
That's a great way to put it. He is right in his sweet spot where anything that gets to him already is bipartisan. Even if he might be a little controversial, you can always say, hey, the other side agreed. He said in Washington last week, talking to national reporters, somebody asked him about running for president, and he put his chances at 1 in 20,000. But we'll see after he resumes his sweet spot of everyone loves me. Maybe he'll take another look, you know.
Well, he is a remarkably likable guy. He's engaging. He's fun to talk to. He's the kind of guy you want to have a drink with. But when it was his team in control, he couldn't slow down that session. And law enforcement ended up being upset. The gun issue, the rural issue. I mean, it was just amazing. It was amazing to watch. The first 2 years, he had a split legislature.
Well, he's probably wishing he had that split legislature last year and the year before, because that would have made the election a bit easier for him. Probably wouldn't have had the gun bills. He wouldn't have had the renewable energy standard. And what we're already seeing in this legislative session is a lot of attempts at trying to roll back those bills that he signed then. The renewable energy standard,
voting bills,
gun measures.
All right, well, let's take a couple of those. Start off with guns, which I think was really the catalyst for a lot of things. Is there any room for any sort of movement on these gun bills to either expand the capacity of magazines, to change any of this, or a complete repeal, or is this a non-starter?
Republicans insist that they have enough support in the House to attack the magazine ammunition limit. It's interesting to me that the gun bills are starting in the House, not the Senate, which the Republicans control. Makes me think that they think there's some room for negotiation there. But I'm going to disagree with both of you about what you said about the 2 years.
Wrong.
I know. I think Hickenlooper's problem in 2013 and 2014 was that he was too good with the legislature and kept things off his desk, and then didn't understand that people would notice that he didn't veto anything. He would let it be known to legislators. For example, death penalty repeal, changing the mag limit from 10 to 15. that's what he was, and that's what got to him, so he signed it all.
I
think he
was
not politically savvy enough to know that he needed to disagree with.
He's politically savvy when it comes to his reelection, and he knew that after the poop hit the fan with guns and the ballot box issue, the voting law, and renewable energy, he saw that death penalty thing coming. He had already gone through the possible clemency issue with Nathan Dunlap, and he knew if this was on the ballot, he'd have to support it. He saw the poll numbers, 65% of Coloradans support the death penalty. You know, that was political survival. That wasn't, oh, I know how to work with the legislature. The guy couldn't say no to a single thing that made it to his desk. Even when Bill Owens was governor and we had Republican House and Senate, even he managed to veto.
Well, I mean, last year he brought out the veto pen, and there was
in an election year, yes.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree, but you know, I mean, he did, but it was on issues like water. There was a water bill that he wasn't comfortable with. There was, you know, things like that. This year, you're right. I mean, he won't probably have to make those tough decisions. But back to your original question about whether some of these bills trying to roll back the legislation from 2013 and even last year, they think that if they can start in the Senate, where Republicans now have control, then they can at least get to the floor and they can have, you know, debate that everybody will watch, that we'll all talk about, and that will bring these issues back to the high.
I would suspect there might be enough votes to alter, maybe even abolish the magazine ban in the House, but I don't believe that Dickie Lee Hollinghorst, the new Speaker of the House, would ever let it get to the floor.
That's a big question. The question is how much does the Democrats who survived, every Democrat who's there did not lose in a recall, did not resign because they faced a recall. They made it. They went back to voters, and even in some vulnerable districts, a lot of them lost. But those that didn't and got back, what is your motivation to, unless you believe that the magazine limit was silly to begin with, in which case, why did you vote for it? Why would you now vote to change or repeal it?
Like the governor who signed it and then afterwards said, well, you know, I didn't really like it.
I don't see the upside to Democrats to changing it. I don't see
the upside to that either. There's nothing they can gain for that.
Nobody.
First of all, it doesn't even matter. There's still a Democratic-controlled House, and anything that happens, if it gets out of the Senate, it'll go there and it won't get to the floor in the House. So it's a moot point, really.
Mr. Know-it-all. All right, let's talk a little bit about the most exciting part of politics always, the budget, which is always amazing because this is by far the most important thing that the legislature does. This is where they set priorities. It's where they decide who's going to get funded and who's not going to get funded. And it never gets any real news coverage because it is the most boring, god-awful thing to read about. There's no sexiness to it at all. This year we might have a Tabor refund for the first time since a decade almost.
Yeah.
Cadman, the president of the Senate, says we're going to give the money back to the taxpayers. The governor has made it very clear that he'd like to keep it. The Denver Post is already on their jihad to keep it. So what happens with that?
I think it was interesting that you saw on opening day. I think the arguments are already laid out. I thought it was interesting that you heard House Republican leader Del Grosso talk about what you could do with $50 or $60, because that's going to be the argument. Democrats are going to say, when we know what the potential refund is, it's going to be $50, $60 some dollars for the average taxpayer, likely. And they'll come out and say, hey, do you want a dinner at Outback Steakhouse, or do you want your schools to have a new roof? That's the nuts and bolts argument they're going to make. And you saw right away, day one, Republicans try to counter that, saying, hey, you might say it's just a tank of gas, but for folks who are struggling, that's real money.
Families.
So that's going to be, they're going to come out with a dollar number, and they're going to fight about that number all the rest of the time.
And a guy with a drug habit like mine, $50 goes a long way.
I will say this, I'm got to say, surprised with Senator Morgan Carroll, the minority leader now. She said that she does not believe, and speaking for the caucus potentially as well, that an initiative should be referred to voters by the legislature to retain the money.
But they can't anyway.
Well, no, the legislature can ask the voters themselves.
They can't, because it takes a 2/3 vote.
Of course,
that's going to happen.
And that's a good point. But just the fact that at least her talking points on this are that this needs to be a grassroots community effort started by the people, because this is a people.
It's not going to be any other way. It's going to be the school unions doing the same thing, and a few deep pocket liberals who will make it look like a grassroots thing, because that's the only route they can have. And I would suspect they'll be asking to keep the overhead.
I think they may ask voters about, they might get 2/3 to ask voters if they can pin it somehow to the marijuana taxes.
Oh,
This whole, it's a
That's
really
like a
complicated.
separate-
How do you mean? Explain that.
It's a really complicated thing to explain to folks, but our weird.
Don't worry, you're only a
I know.
reporter. It's not your job.
Yeah, exactly. Our weird constitutional framework could be interpreted just by some, depending what the final numbers are, and we won't know till March. Could be interpreted to say that the state not only owes general fund revenue back, but they owe some of the special taxes passed under Proposition AA a couple years ago. These are taxes collected on recreational the pot taxes.
But these are like really
and
cheap. Yeah.
here's where it's golden for lawmakers. Dollars are fungible. Once $1 bill goes into the general fund, you can use it on hot dogs or schools or roads or whatever you want. And if you have something that you think people will support, like taxing pot, why not ask people to keep it? And I think it's interesting, every time Republicans say we will not consider talking to voters, we will not consider any reduction to table limits, you ask them about pot taxes, they go, well, voters really did want that.
To be purist about it, you could say that taxes paid should go back to whoever paid it. I have a hard time seeing Republicans or Democrats going, you know, those pot smokers, we got to find a way to refund it just back to them.
I think I mean, first of all, they're very carefully trying to separate the issues. So they're saying that there's the Tabor refund, you know, dealing with the general fund and all that, and then they're saying that there's the marijuana Tabor refund.
I think that only works for junkies.
But there is
political junkies.
Yeah, but they could get
I
sued.
just assumed you meant your other junkie thing, but no, you know, and they do make a good point. They already went to voters. They said, look, can we tax marijuana to regulate? And voters said yes. And now, because of this obscure provision in the Taxpayer Bill of Rights in our Constitution, we now have to go back to voters to say, can we now keep that money that you already let us have? So I can understand why they're trying to separate those issues.
No, I don't, only that they want to keep the money. Let's be honest, politicians, RRDs, want to keep excess revenues in government. They might have to do the Republican talking points that we don't, but their jobs are easier. When there's limitations, they have to do something really awful.
I've heard Republicans.
They have to do their job and actually say, I'd rather fund K-12 and not fund midnight basketball or whatever it is. And those are tough decisions because everybody's got their own constituency that they want to worry about.
Republicans are talking this year already about surpluses dealing with education, transportation. You know, I mean, yeah, it goes both ways.
Let's talk a little bit of pot because you offered me the joint. What regulations are we looking for? It looks like the edible thing is going to become a big issue. How do we regulate edibles? Are we finished with pot regulations, or is that coming back?
We are never finished with pot regulations. It's going to be a big pot year in two avenues. Number one, all the medical regulations sunset this year, so everything is on the table. Lawmakers they probably will retain it almost exactly the way it is, but they could make some big changes. There are some people that want to see big tax changes, want to see big changes to how caregivers are regulated. So that's going to be a big fight. And on the other avenue, which you mentioned, there was a lot of anxiety about edibles, and the Department of Revenue assembled this work group to look at how to make it so that a Chips Ahoy cookie and a pot cookie look different. That was and at the end of the day, they did not agree on anything. Instead they're like, oh, let's just punt this to lawmakers and send them all the recs and see what they do with it. So that'll be very interesting.
Until next time, Kristen, thank you. Peter, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Stay tuned. Light them if you got them.